Welcome to TechNow episode 21, where we process the power of processors. See how I got that ready for you?
Don't forget the drill.
I got the drill.
That's right.
The power. I am Chuck Tomasi, Senior Services Enablement Program Manager at ServiceNow. Sitting right across the virtual table from me is...
Oh, me. I'm Kreg Stepp, and I work with orchestration, and I'm an automation consultant.
All right.
Yes,
So we have a wide and varied expertise going on here.
That's right. at least 10 years of experience between the both of us.
Let us get the screen locked and the presentation up. So we'll do that picture-in-a-picture thing real quick.
All right.
Hope I don't freak anybody out doing this. Goodbye.
The infinite mirror.
And we will give you the 411. I guess that's an American-only thing on processors.
Processors.
So, first of all, here's our thinking guy. We brought him back from meme land. And he wants to know what a ServiceNow processor is and why he should care. That's what we're here to do for you.
Now, you're talking about Intel, AMD, or otherwise?
No, it's this old Zilog Z80 I have in my hand.
That's right.
This is ServiceNow processors. They actually run behind the scenes on a lot of stuff, and you have the capability to write your own. Okay, there's our show. Goodbye.
Yeah, have a good day.
Oh, we forgot the commercial. It's not too early to start thinking about Knowledge 16 in Las Vegas. We're having the great fortunate that we are going to the same place this year as last year. So if you were there in Knowledge 15, you don't have to learn your way around from the Mandalay Bay to the Luxor and all that good stuff. It's already mapped out for you.
So it's just like we've been there the entire year. You just don't know. You just came back and visited us again.
Right. So, Kreg, what is Knowledge 16?
What is Knowledge 16? It's a plethora of knowledge about ServiceNow. It's really a user conference where you can participate in workshops, network with other people, talk about your experiences, and who knows what else.
Hands-on labs. Who's it for?
It's for really anybody that wants to know more about ServiceWatch and ServiceNow.
I've done the same thing. That's been on my brain for the last year, and it's hard to dislodge it.
That's right. Service everything. Everything's a service, right?
Everything is a service. So CIOs will be there, developers and admins will be there, and everybody in between. And it's not just around IT, because ServiceNow is branching out, expanding into other areas of your enterprise. So you may have people from legal there wanting to know how to make a legal application. That's perfectly fine with us too. I think we're targeting 11 or 12,000 people this year. It's ridiculous.
Yes, and I met a lot of diverse people that used ServiceNow last year. It was a lot of fun.
It is a lot of fun, and I hope to see you there. It's not too late to start, or not too early to start thinking about going. Well, it is late if you watch this after May of 2016.
That's right.
It has moved. We can only get the venue at certain times, so it's not always in mid-April or late April or early May. This one is in mid-May, May 15th through 20th, 2016. Well,
that's good because last one ran over my anniversary, so my wife wasn't too happy. But
oh, good.
This year it'll be good.
This is actually being recorded in mid-August of 2015, so this is the perfect time to start lining up your budgets for 2016, assuming your fiscal year starts on the 1st of the calendar year. But get these things in the pipeline. Start suggesting. If you need help, go over to knowledge.servicenow.com, and there's information on how you can rationalize it, justify it, and sell it to your own management structure. Okay, enough of the commercial. Let's get on with the processor. We're going to do several things in this video. Define what a processor is and what's in it for you, or why you should care. How to develop and test your processor, some best practices there, and some examples. We'll actually do one live on the fly with some various examples and scenarios, and I will tell about an experience that I had of developing a processor, just to get your mind going about what you can do with these things. And of course, some reference information at the end.
Nothing helps to illustrate it than a good example.
Yeah, one that works.
Yeah, that's true.
So in a nutshell, processors provide you with a customizable endpoint, a URL that you can use for a third-party application to retrieve information from ServiceNow. We've all used these, even though you may not be aware of them, and some of us may have used them for integrations between other systems. So just by pulling up an incident form, you're using a processor. by bringing up service catalog. You're using a processor. You may not be able to change this, but you are using a processor. And we can use these to run server-side JavaScript that you can write, customizable, fully on your own. Works great.
So what you're talking about doing really is building your own API, sort of?
Yes, that's an excellent way of thinking about it. Thank you.
So your own inputs and outputs ServiceNow. That's pretty cool.
Yep.
All right.
You can find these on your application menu navigator under system definition processors. You go there, I think in Fuji, there are about 131 of these things. Now, notice under the type column, some say Java and some say script. The Java ones are written in the Java platform, and this is a way that the platform interacts with these things. So you can't modify these. You can't really see them. They're just sort of there and necessary part of the platform. The ones you can take a look at and modify and create your own are where the type is script. And we'll go through and build one of these just to show you what it's like. So I just wanted to point out there's different types. Don't freak out and go, well, how come I can't look at this one?
Yeah.
The format of a standard processor is, of course, your HTTPS and your instance name. And then you give a path endpoint, .do or .do.
Mm-hmm.
So like I said, if you say incident.do, you're running a processor. If you say incident_list.do, you're running a processor. It's doing this all on the back end. And you can specify additional parameters on that URL to refine the information, maybe get a specific record, maybe change the format of the output. Mm-hmm. So as you see in these examples, if I say incident.do !WSDL, I'm going to get back the WSDL for a SOAP integration to say what I can do, what I can't do, what the dictionary elements look like, all that good stuff. That is a processor. There's another similar related one, $XML. Hey, give me the list of incidents, but format it as XML. And by the way, only give me the ones where active is false. So I can build very powerful, very flexible things. I've got another one for PDF. These are 3 separate processors, even though it looks like they're all operating on the same table or record on the incident table. So they are 3 different processors, and I'll explain that in just a sec.
I do have a question.
Yes.
I assume, and I haven't tried this myself, but I assume that as you're making a processor, you got to be careful not to step on another processor.
That's a very good idea. Yes. I haven't looked at the dictionary entries, but I'm certain there's some unique fields in there that say, no, there's one that already exists.
Like you don't want to make another one that says incident.do because that would be a problem.
That would be a problem. Okay. Yes, it could. That would be interesting. I should experiment with that.
Yeah. Tear it up.
Why do we care? What's in it for me about processors? Well, if you've got a third-party system that wants to pull information from ServiceNow, you could do it with an integration, maybe set up a REST API or something like that. But you could also create your own custom output. Let's say you are a PostScript genius and you know that there's a rich set of information in ServiceNow that you want formatted as PostScript. And ServiceNow doesn't have a PostScript processor or PostScript output format by itself. Hey, I can write a processor, take the data, embed it into the PostScript framework, write that part, and send it off. Ta-da, I've got PostScript. So it's a way to get at that information in any way you conceive possible. Obviously, we throw in some common ones like CSV, PDF, XML.
Very common. Used in lots of systems.
So create your custom output. We offer several of them, but you can go beyond that and be very flexible in not only what you send back to the user, but what they can ask for. Like you said, this is an API, and we'll get to some of the best practices in just a sec. Any questions so far, class?
No.
Okay.
Not so far.
You ask them as they keep coming up.
Sure.
So there are 2 major objects you want to get familiar with if you're writing a processor. This is server-side script. So if you haven't gone back and learned about scripting, that's probably a pretty good idea. We've got a GRequest, which has one method on it, one function you can do, and that's get your parameters. So if I wanted in this example, to get the value Chuck off of the name parameter, I do HTTPS, blah, 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 servicenow.com/hello.do !name equals Chuck. I want that Chuck piece. I can say G_request dot get parameter, and then put in single quotes in those parentheses name. And
Okay,
I would
Mr.
get back the
Tomasi,
value.
I have a question, Mr. Tomasi.
Yes.
And I have a feeling I know the answer already, but you had on the previous URL example, you had sysparm. Can you just put the variable and a value, or do you need sysparm?
You do not need sysparm. That is a convention that ServiceNow came up with, and we'll get to that when we talk about building your API. But that's a very good thing to discuss before you start writing one of these things.
Okay.
This is I'm just putting tools in your toolbox. I'll show you how to use them later.
Okay. So I don't cut my finger off
with a hammer.
Yes, right.
The other object is gprocessor. There are a few methods here. The most common one is that third one down. I don't know why I didn't put it at the top, but it's write output. Once you've got all of your content built, let's say we're going back to that PostScript example, I can dump all of the PostScript at once using write output and put the content type in there. I forget what it is, application/PostScript. It's one of those MIME types that you put for the content type.
Like text/HTML.
Yeah, application/JSON, some audio/MP3. No, is that one? MPEG. That's, I always get that one wrong. Sorry. Not that I'm going to write an audio file, but
you should know better on that one.
I should know better on that one. I do it like twice a week.
Right.
That's why I keep getting it wrong. I don't have to remember. It's in a choice list. That's the common one. You can also use some of these other ones, like the redirect. If your processor just does some processing and has no tangible output, you may want to use redirect. Just like in a UI action, when I'm done with this, send somebody over there. Maybe it's a help page or thank you for your submission. I'm done. Whatever it happens to be, you can do that.
Here, like a help, how to use this kind of thing.
Full information is available on the product documentation on the link on the bottom. So if you go to scoped, glide script, processor, API reference, if you basically look up processor, you're going to find this. It's pretty easy. So now that I've shown you the tools, let's get to some best practices. We already talked about one.
These all look like hammers.
If everything looks like a nail. No, wait. If all you have is a hammer.
Yeah, that's right. Everything looks like a nail. All right.
Everything is not a nail. First, decide what is your API going to look like. Kreg, you hinted at this. Do I want sysparm_name or do I just want name? That's completely up to you. There's nothing that says you have to use sys under whatever. You decide. These are your URLs that you're forming, and you can determine, do I want to give people access to a single record, give them the ability to download lots of records? What's going on here? Are there actions involved that I can specify? This is your time to define what is it I need to do and how do I want to specify that to the processor. Very easy to do.
Yep.
Also consider the security on your processor. We have the ability to make these processors public, meaning I don't need to log in to use it, which might be nice for something like a stock ticker. Not that I have stock tickers on ServiceNow.
But you could.
Yeah?
I said, but you could.
You could. It could be outage information that you want to publish to another system. I don't know where or why or when, but I don't need credentials to get that information. It's just going to be publicly available if you know the right URL.
Right.
So there's some examples. Or it could be private information that you say, you know what, I really, really got to log in to get this information, and I'm going to adhere to the ACLs on those records. So if I log in and use this processor as Chuck.Tomasi, it will say, oh, well, according to my rules, Chuck, you have these roles, and the processor has these rights on it, and the data has these other rights. So full ACLs are in effect at that point.
So if you you had a public processor and you were retrieving some data and some of it was sensitive, it would not show that.
That is correct. If I'll show you how this is done, but if I make a processor public, even though the data has security on it, that processor is running as the system account, basically as administrator. So it's sort of being ignored if you're doing glide record queries and things. So be aware of that.
Yes. Okay.
Good point. Also, keep your processor light. And what I mean by that is keep it short, keep it tight. And I'll give you an example of this. Really, we're just out to retrieve the parameters, call some other functions, and send out the output. I don't want to go into somebody's processor and wade through 600 lines of code. It should be 10 or 15 lines just to get the functionality of what's going on. It makes it easier to read. It makes it easier to maintain. And we'll talk about script includes again in a little bit. Leverage those for the heavy lifting. So if you've got complex logic on the back end, stick those in a script include. If you haven't gone back and watched the script include episode that Andrew Kincaid and I did back in 1842 or whatever it was. It seems like that long ago, but it was probably 2013.
Right.
Very informative and highlights the values and virtues of script include. So go watch that and you'll understand better why we're advocating keeping your processor light and leverage those script includes.
They had YouTube back in 1842. It's pretty cool.
Yes, it was. Yes, we'll go with that.
Only you would know.
Part of keeping that processor light is once you've gathered up all the output, you're not calling write output on every line of output. This isn't like a print line or a printf or GS print kind of thing where you say, here's another line of text. You gather it all up and then dump it. I'd prefer this was called dump output or write last or something more effective. But that's when you call write output is I'm done. Here's your output.
Sure. I've done that before where I do in some scripting where I do output buffering.
Yep.
And all the output gets stuck in a variable and then you just dump it out.
It's actually kind of nice in many situations because if your output is prefixed by something, you can avoid those annoying prefixes.
Well, you can also do a search and replace in it before you dump it all out if you needed to
do something. Getting fancy.
Yeah.
All right. Let's do a real quick demo. I am going to write a processor for you.
Yay. Just for me?
Still sharing the desktop, right? I have one. This is like a cooking show. I baked one in the oven earlier, so you didn't have to watch me type. I am going to create a new processor. Again, I'm under system definition, processors, and I click new. Easy as that. And of course, my session timed out for whatever reason. Let's continue.
Way to go. You have one job.
I set this up like an hour ago. Okay, Chuck's awesome processor. That's what we're going to call it. It's going to be of type script, and I get a script box. This is server-side stuff. Be a good sysadmin and put in a description. This is for the TechNow demo. It wouldn't make you watch me type. And the parameters here are going to be, and now if you saw that example where I was doing the WSDL and the XML and the PDF on the incident table, that's where you would specify this. I could write 4 versions of this Chuck's awesome processor, and this parameter could say XML, it could say ABC, it could say JFK. This separates the different flavors, if you will, of the processor. So don't get that confused with my command line parameters or the URL parameters that I'm going to get in just a second. Okay. The path is, what is the URL that I'm going to use? Obviously, I don't want to use this nonsense up here. It's got quotes and spaces. That's not a very pretty URL. So I'm just going to call this one Chuck.
Or like we mentioned earlier, using one that already exists in the system.
Right.
Yeah, you don't want to do that.
Nope. So yeah, putting incident here would be bad. Call it Chuck. First thing I want to do is go get my command line parameters. My API says I'm going to have a name and a limit. So let's go get those. I'll save those into the variable username and limit. Very easy example here. Nothing fancy going on. Then, as we mentioned before, we're going to generate some output. Now, I am not using a script include for this trivial example, but it's just an example of what's going on. My output is going to be an array. When I need to generate some output, I will push that text into the array. Here you can see I'm using the value of my username parameter. So it says, hello, Chuck, or hello, Kreg, or hello, Bob, whatever it happens to be. And if I specify a limit, I'll also push that onto the array. Well, gee, Chuck, how do you print an array? Arrays are fun for collecting it, but I'm only going to output once at the end with my G processor write output, specify the content type, which is that MIME type text HTML, and then join the array together with new lines so that it looks and walks and talks and smells like text.
Everybody loves join, right?
Everybody loves join. I love arrays. I use them all the time.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So that's it. That's our processor. Let's go test it out. I'm going to fire up an incognito window and go to the same instance and say chuck.do name equals Kreg. And it comes up and says, please log in. Now, is this a public processor or not?
I would say not.
I would say not either. So let's go ahead and log in, see if I can remember my credentials from yesterday. And it worked, but
Wow,
that was kind of annoying. I may want to make this public. It says, hello, Kreg. That's awesome.
Yeah, it does.
An awesome processor.
It's an awesome name.
So let's close the incognito window so it makes us re-authenticate. It forgets I ever authenticated there. And show you how to make that a public processor. We go to the table syspublic. Now, I know one time this was a module somewhere. It was like public pages. But I don't know why, if it's inactive out of on a default system or not, but syspublic, that's what you need to know.
Okay.
And it is very easy to turn that processor into a public page. You put the name right there and you make sure it's active and you say submit. Ooh, that's probably one of the easiest things I've done in ServiceNow ever.
Now, just to be clear, that name has to match the one that you put on your processor for the path.
It's the path name, correct.
Right.
Thank you for pointing that out. So let's go to chuck.do, logging into something there for a second with Chuck Tomasi. And we say, now, no more credentials, no more authentication. And the fact, that's why I used the incognito window, because if it wasn't a public page, it would make me re-authenticate again.
Right.
It's not caching credentials with the incognito window. Just so there's no smoke and mirrors going on here. You all follow that along. All right. Notice I also don't have a limit argument on here, so it doesn't tell me anything about the limit. But I'll say Craig's limit is 4.
But I want 5.
After 4, he can't drive home.
That's right. That's right.
And there's the other output. So the script is doing exactly what I want. Now, because I didn't log in, as you said before, it's not paying attention to any credentials or anything because I'm not logged in as Chuck. I'm basically logged in as the system here to say, hey, go get me this information.
So you need to be extra careful what information you're spitting out.
Yes, you do. One other thing I want to show you, if I do log in, there are access controls. Let me elevate my security. Remember this time. Go to OK. And if I want to make that processor maybe it's only executed by people with the admin role. Okay, I go to access control list under system security, create a new ACL. And up here, the first field is type. Normally, we manipulate types of records and say these records are off limits, these tables are available, et cetera, et cetera. There's also a couple other choices in here, one of which is a processor. How about that? The only operation you get is execute. Now, the name is the name of the processor, not the path name. So before, when we made a syspublic page, we used the path name. This is the name.
And it has to match exactly because they're not necessarily, there's no related table here. So you got to type it in exactly like
correct. So this is Chuck's awesome processor. Make it only available to admins. And I would do that like you normally would with any other ACL. Put in the admin role, save it, done. So
now I have a question. Since you just put this in, and I don't know if you're getting ready to go there or not, but this is our processor is also listed in the public table and has an ACL. So
yeah,
which wins?
This really doesn't count.
It doesn't count.
It doesn't count. You want to try it?
Yes.
Maybe make me a liar. Chuck.do name.
I thought it'd be the most restrictive as the winner, but I might be wrong. Oh well, yeah. Go ahead.
Okay. Because I said this is a public page, and the processor is running as the system account, which has pretty much full rights. So be aware on those public pages what you're really publishing.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Back to the PowerPoint. You got that on my screen?
I do. It says demo.
The demo is over. Okay. Here's an example of one that I had to write. About a year ago, 18 months or so, I was transferred to the services enablement team, and my boss said, hey, we'd like you to start producing audio and video content. And can we make that pushable to the users in a podcast form?
Yeah, pushable.
Wanted to push technology.
Yeah.
And he didn't know it at the time, but I have co-written Podcasting for Dummies and said, yeah, I can do that. I had to go to page 212 or whatever it was to look up the RSS format because I don't commit file formats to my head. I got other useless knowledge rattling around up there.
Now I'm disappointed.
But he wanted, yeah, -1 on my nerd card.
Give me your card. I'm going to cut the corner off.
Oh, we're cutting corners on this show. I see how
that's
it
right.
goes.
Yeah, that's right.
He said, I want people to be able to subscribe to iTunes. So I said, well, the table structure is actually pretty easy. Thought that up in about 10 minutes once I looked at the RSS format. And I also knew that ServiceNow had an RSS processor because you just say any table $RSS and away you go. That wasn't going to cut it because it didn't support the enclosure tag. And the enclosure tag is sort of like an attachment. It's more of a pointer to an attachment. Right. And that's really what makes podcasts go. Thank you, Adam Curry and Dave Weiner, for your research in 2004.
Yeah, go look them up on Wikipedia and you can find out about it.
So I said, I can write a processor.
Mm-hmm.
I wrote one to generate the podcast RSS feed complete with the enclosure tags and formatted exactly the way I want. It supports images and all that cool stuff. So as I mentioned, the table structure is actually pretty simple. I have a show. Let's call it the Technical Consultant Enablement Podcast. And episode 0 is Welcome to My Show. Episode 1 is Let's Learn to JavaScript. Episode 2 is Let's Learn How to Manage Local Instances. That kind of stuff. That all of these have various parameters on them. When do you want it published? Are we going to do whatever? But you subscribe to it through a URL, just like a normal podcast. Only you use the ServiceNow instance and your custom processor, podcast.do, and some parameter to say, this is the show I want. So here's what the processor looks like. Nice and light. I don't have a lot of scripting here. It does a few basic things like get the parameter of the show ID. So when somebody says podcast.do, $ID equals POD 001 0001, whatever the show ID is on that record. Okay. It will go and say, that's the one I want. I'm going to get all the information about the show and the underlying episodes that I'm allowed to publish at this point and go from there. Leverages a script include for all the heavy lifting. Notice there's nothing in here about XML generation.
That's true. Yeah.
You don't see any tags. There's nothing. It's all hidden in that nasty, ugly script include. And this is available on the Share portal if you want.
Wait, let's review your code.
Yeah. That'll be interesting feedback. Then we've got the actual heavy lifting. We'll go call the RSS prologue because all of the podcasts have a standard header template. This is going to be an RSS 2.0 feed with the iTunes dictionary, blah, blah, blah. Then we get into the show. If this is an active show, I'll print out the title, which is going to be the header caption for the show, and the items are going to be the episodes underneath that. It's just, there's some language here going on that I was relating it back to the XML tag. So my methods are kind of goofy named. And then the epilogue is, let's close out that prologue tag. Mm-hmm. Finally, this is all built up in memory in an array or something somewhere. I'm going to dump it out with the rss.getOutput method from that same script include. Right. And here comes all the text. Boom. It actually works. What you get is something like this. I know it's a little hard to read, so let me zoom in there for you. There's my standard header from the prologue method. Here's the channel or the show title information, complete with a reference to an image and language and when it was built, all that kind of stuff. And the individual shows are in here. And notice there are 2 enclosure tags in there that point to a box. I don't have to host my files on ServiceNow. In fact, I recommend you don't. Yeah. Large movie files. That's Stick them on Box or Dropbox or anywhere that has a publicly available URL to say, hey, over there is where your file is. And that's really all it takes to make a podcast feed. So that was my scenario. I solved it. Took a couple of weeks just to do the research on processors, get the RSS feed working, and keep experimenting with iTunes. It is not a public processor. So when you put your URL into iTunes, it will prompt you for a password. It says, I log in as Chuck.Tomasi and my ServiceNow credentials. And then it starts downloading shows. It worked great.
Very cool. Very cool.
Even on my phone. Just a little bit of product documentation. We mentioned the API references over there on the wiki. Chris Malloy has also put together a simple example, as has John Anderson put together a little video on YouTube about making a public page. I just aggregated all of this information into the presentation you saw for completeness factor.
Well, what if somebody wants to look at your podcast application?
It's on the share portal at share.servicenow.com.
Okay.
So you can download it. I don't know if I have any sample data in there or not, but the script includes the processor. It's got a wonderful UI page that makes a nice catalog with the shaded tiles and everything. That I think that took the longest. Kreg, you even had an input on this. I think it was about the time you started at the company when I was working on this.
Actually, it was just before, I think.
Yeah, about using an embedded video, because we wanted an embedded player on the user page. So you don't have to subscribe to get this content. You can watch it right online.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
So
that
was
kind of fun. Yeah.
It was. Yeah, I think you gave me the idea, and then I scratched my head for a while and then came back to you and said, well, I think, what did we use? JS Viewer, JS Player, something like that?
Yeah, I think that's the one. Yeah, there's a couple different ones, but that's one of them, yes.
Yeah, it turned out easy. It's pretty slick. All right, your takeaway is that processors are powerful, and you can do just about any output you want. If ServiceNow doesn't offer the output format you want, and you've got another system that wants to consume it, knock yourself out. It's pretty easy to make your own API. You can follow us at these places. We'd love to hear from you. We're always taking suggestions for potential future shows. And thank you very much. Here, let me go back to camera so they can see our smiling mugs. Turn off.
Hello, everybody.
Screen sharing. Close that processor.
Falling into the abyss.
Echo, 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 echo. All right.
And there we are.
And there we are. Enough to wave goodbye. So
actually, hey, by the way, that kind of reminded me of Interstellar. You know, we're going into the black hole, and I don't know if you've seen that. Never mind.
Yes, I have. It's like a year ago.
Yeah. Reach back.
Thank you very much for watching. We look forward to hearing from you in the future. And until next time, go innovate something.
Yeah.
Tell us about it.
Make something. All right. Bye, y'all.
Bye.